Hey, good afternoon. It's 40 out. Got light rain. Kind of miserable. It's okay, we're indoors though. Well, that was random. Exceptional radio. You know, the one benefit of this kind of weather is that my sinuses are working so well that I'm draining like everything out that was building up over the past week. And even
I'm not dry.
Yeah. And even though going outside you get kind of damp in that bone-chilling, piercing way, what's anyone actually doing outside in weather like this? I don't think this is like, let's go outside for a walk kind of weather. This is like,
I've been trying that and it doesn't work quite as well.
No.
It's about the last month or two. I don't know if we have another month left, but about the last month we can get walks.
Yeah, like I feel To me, there's unless you're really dressed to like sit still and windbreaker and layers and more layers and appropriate foot weather. There's like an old Scandinavian saying that translates to something like, "There's no such thing as bad weather, just the wrong clothes." But at a certain point, the right clothes make it so, like, yeah, you can't really walk that far dressed like that.
Well, it's like if you get the proper attire for the first 5 minutes of the walk, then you overheat.
Yeah,
And then if you don't dress that extra layer, then you're cold the first 5 minutes till you heat up, but then you have to keep moving, and that's like sometimes difficult. So I feel
yeah.
like it's just really difficult not to fuck with your immune system.
I've tried really hard to develop like layered clothing systems for being outdoors in miserable weather. And what I've discovered for myself, at least for like my metabolism and my level of activity and that kind of thing, how much heat I generate, I can do one thing. I can like dress to be comfortable and moving very little, or I have to be moving. And like the middle ground is that I have to shed a lot of layers like in between phases where, okay, I'm going to start moving now. Going to move a little bit, then I'm going to take off this jacket, and then I'm going to unzip a portion of this pullover, and I might even lose my gloves because I'm starting to really radiate heat now because I'm moving. But you're right. As soon as I'd stop moving, it's like, okay, where are the gloves? Let's get this pullover closed and get this jacket back on. I guess that would be the process if we were dealing with more hostile environments. We'd have to have specialized equipment to be exposed in those environments, and there would be some kind of you know process of getting out of that kind of suit so you could get into whatever safe building and do your job. But you wouldn't wear the extreme conditions. Like you don't wear an EV suit in the cockpit of a spaceship. At least you're not supposed to. I mean, I suppose if there's like a hull breach, yeah, sure, you would want to have that. But
Right? I think there's certain times where they have it on.
well,
Just
they have an intravehicular suit for like takeoff and like any kind of I think dangerous maneuvers like takeoff and landing type situations where they should be wearing a suit that can be pressurized, but that suit's not the same when they're supposed to be going outside in.
right, and that's where it's like I think it's only um in certain conditions when they have to cut weight where they double the suit as in both, where it's like the original missions, I don't know if they had the luxury to have two different suits, where they had to like have the least amount of processing power possible, where
Yeah. I think
I
once
can't
they started
imagine.
doing going outside the vehicle, they realized really quick. I can't remember the Russian dude's name, but he went out and his suit immediately inflated to this like solid balloon, and he had to deflate the suit so he could get back inside the module. And that's when they needed to design specialized EV suits. That's when they realized that. It's like the first attempted spacewalk. The suit just legit turned into like a inflatable raft buoy thing, like really rigid. No joke. Could not move his arms, and then to puncture it. Fucking Russians. I guess those were the Soviets.
I mean, a lot of that shit was very experimental, on the fly.
Oh yeah.
In the first iteration. So
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think we're kind of back to on the fly with the SpaceX thing. They just detonated their second heavy Falcon or whatever booster, and then lost another Starship. So, but it's built into their budget, and it's a success from the data they can glean.
heavy air quotes.
Oh man, I don't have big enough hands for those quotes.
Well, it's funny to me, like the way people treat free market businesses is the same expectations that they're trying to put on like the post office and NASA. And I don't know when that change happened. Like, I don't know if it was boomers or I don't feel like Gen X would have been the people to do it, but maybe boomers, like when Gen X was starting to grow up, maybe they shifted their view and was like,
Well, there's like the World War II boomers, and then there's like
well, that's the greatest
the
generation.
that's the Great
Yeah,
Generation, and then the boomers are like from
the greatest
Korean
generation
War.
had the boomers.
So what was the generation during the Korean War? Is that still the greatest
I
generation?
think that's still greatest.
Man, so they
Yeah.
got like two generations worth of population and economic influence, like early on. Is that right then?
Yeah, Americans born between 1900 and 1925. So yeah, Jesus Christ. Um, yeah, that would have been people who fought in the World War II and Korean War
And then all of the subsequent
effectively
businesses that kind of emerged in the 50s
and
that
had the kids.
had more kids that gave us hippies.
Yeah, that's kind of. But it's also like it's really difficult to imagine that these are the same people that are kind of like post-slavery. A lot of the people that are alive in the South maybe were alive in the last days of slavery or had a parent or some shit that was alive during slavery. So it's wild, the overlap of generations. Because my grandfather was born in like 1918 or some shit.
I mean, the
Some
60s
I
are
forget.
the era that we consider to be like the 60s extends well into the 70s. And a
Oh
lot,
yeah,
and
for
like the
sure, for
70s,
sure.
the overlap within the 70s, or the what people think is the 70s, also goes into the beginning of the 80s, which is also really weird, like
Well,
culturally, I mean. And then,
on that
but it seems
note,
like
the
subsequent generations, like millennials, have had less time than Gen X, and then Gen Z has even less time. Now the alphas have emerged, and it's like, what the hell's going on?
well, it all gets reframed. We used to be Gen Y, and then they changed it to millennials. And further, the retroactive or retrospective gaze has a hard time distinguishing between eras because it wasn't there. So like
Yeah,
a lot of the fashion we think is 70s is really 60s. And then like you said, a lot of the stuff we think of in the 70s is really 80s, like the key parties and the fucking clubs and shit like that that peaked early 80s instead of like the 70s and the way we think of it. So I think it's like when we weren't there or when we weren't cognizant during a lot of it, it's really easy to just muddle it together, which is also why in the other direction, everything that's every person that's like below 40 gets lumped together. And that's how you end up with millennials. And then you end up with like Z and Zennials, which effectively cross over because the stuff that boomers were blaming on millennials was initially Generation Z, and then they had to be like, "Oh, we meant Zennials," because they can't ever admit they did anything wrong. So they had to act like they were talking about this magical in between segment.
oh, the cusp generation.
Yeah, that they weren't really talking about.
uh,
But like I said, they can't admit ever that they did anything wrong.
I saw this really interesting short on YouTube the other day. It was like angry old punk rock dad, and I'm pretty sure that's the grumpy old man now. Is some old punk rock dad, like not in like the endearing kind of way, like the get off, not the get off my lawn, but the like, the one that still is complaining about things. Like,
Well, they're the gatekeepers that also then complain that the youth don't listen to the old shit, and it's like, especially if they're a young girl, it's like a young girl could be wearing a Guns N' Roses t-shirt or some shit, and the old man will be like, name 17 Guns N' Roses songs if you're a real fan.
man, there aren't 17
Like,
good Guns N' Roses songs,
right,
though.
right, exactly.
There's like 3.
And that's why it's like they have these ridiculous gatekeeping standards. That's been satirized in multiple forms of media, but it gets worse, and it hasn't gotten better because
Man.
of the satire, as if the satire is supposed to like make those dudes aware of them their ridiculousness.
So, like, I knew that, like, the industrialization and commercialization of like what was underground electronic music was always going to happen. It was always going to be absorbed into pop music. It was always going to become mainstream. It was always going to become all those things, just like every other music culture that preceded it. And it's interesting because I still meet people who have just discovered like punk rock or any kind of protest music, and because it's brand new, it's like still has power, because it has power. This stuff has power. All the music has some kind of energy for somebody. But punk rock is dead. It's canned. Pop punk is the thing that exists in its place. That can be churned out like so quickly that nobody knows who wrote the song. No one cares because it all sounds the same. The same thing with rock and roll these days. A lot of it sounds the same, which is really weird. In fact, the only place that I've found a diversity of different genre sounds is in country music, which is really messed up. But it's because they're borrowing, 15 to 30-year-old rock idioms and using them like in like with each other. And so it's like collage rock. Not college rock, but collage rock.
Well, but there was never
Country music is always stolen, like everything.
I mean, but
thematically,
it was
though.
also never meant to be like rebel music, except for specifically Johnny Cash. So
Yeah.
there's not this air of like needing to rebel against authority or against the institution that punk rock inherently has, and you can't have an anti-institution genre exist over time without being a paradox. And
Hmm.
I think that's why like you said, became pop. I don't even know if it's pop punk. Like pop punk is too much of an oxymoron in that it's like, yeah, it's trying to be punk in its costume and in
I guess
the
it's pop
genre sound.
cosplay punk.
Right, it is. And I think and that's all it can be anymore, because there is an institution that is popular, so therefore it can't be anti-establishment rebel music. It just can't be that anymore unless it's something else. Like punk can't do that. And then if you had something else and called it punk, like I feel like the young rap music that isn't really in line with the older, more constructed institution rap music, it's more in line with punk than the pop punk you're talking about.
Oh yeah,
And it
totally.
gets talked about in the same way that punk music did by the classic rockers.
Hey,
And
like,
that's why,
why are you listening to that noise? You can't even understand what they're saying.
these kids these days, they don't know what real music is. In my day, the rappers talked about stuff. They didn't just drink lean and pop Percocets and talk about, I can't even understand what they're saying. And it's like, it's funny to see old heads say that about young rappers and with no sense of irony.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, okay, this to me is where the actual punk, whatever you want to call it, spirit is. And it's not like, it don't have to be rock sounding metal sounding music to beat punk
No,
in
not
modern
at all.
times.
Punk is like less about the palette, the tonal palette, than it is about the attitude, and really what it elicits in the listener. Like if you can't hear the music through the noise, you're getting old. That's just reality.
That's true. Yeah.
Like the
I
person who's like,
mean,
"What is that noise?" is like, "Wait, you can't, you don't hear that fat beat? Are you serious?"
so do you listen to Run the Jewels at all?
I don't know. I don't. I haven't. I can't remember anything that I really listen to anymore. If
So
I
you know if you listen to Run the Jewels, mainly because they pop up in random places. Like they had a song on the Black Panther soundtrack. They just had a song on the Invincible episode 4 of season 2 soundtrack.
okay,
So it's like for rap music, it comes up in places that you would not expect rap music to show up. And I think that's why if you listen to them, you'd know because
oh, this is Killer
it's
Mike and
like,
LP.
yeah,
Holy
and
crap!
but the thing about it is the way that they do their songs is not out of line with the way LP or Killer Mike already does their music, and it just is made in a way to then complement the piece of media that it's going with. Because sometimes it'll be like in a video game, because they got a ton of songs in video games too. It'll be like Need for Speed Underground or some shit like that, and you're like, oh shit, here's another Run the Jewels track. I did not expecting it, and that's why when you hear them pop up, it's like, oh, of course they would do something like this because they always do, but the way it's not like they don't promote it because they don't really have to. I mean, I'm sure they like post about it on social media, but it's not like they're taking out billboards and taking out advertisements saying go listen and go watch this shit because you're going to end up doing that anyway. So there's this element of embedding themselves in other parts of culture to then stay relevant is something I think hip hop artists specifically and rap artists specifically have a hard time doing because it's like you don't unless you're good with synthesizing your own media with other things, you don't know what you're gonna complement, and then it ends up being this like weird marriage of um, attempted promotion where like you end up with shit like celebrity deathmatch. That's kind of a hodgepodge, but that type of like celebrity boxing, celebrity deathmatch thing where it just feels like, oh, this is novel, and there's a window closing on the capacity for this to be relevant. Where I feel like initially Shaq taking over Papa John's felt like that, but now years later, it's like I guess it worked. So there's some things that may appear that way, but then actually make a significant impact long enough to not be one of those 15 minutes of fame thing or 15 minutes of relevance. Because I feel like it's leveraging fame to feign relevance. Because you see a lot of this shit with, or you saw a lot of this with the NFTs, where it was all these famous people trying to get people in the NFTs, and they were
Holy
basically
crap!
trying to leverage their fame.
Shaq owns 9 Papa John's franchise units, 17 Auntie Annie's Pretzels restaurants, and 155 Five Guys burger restaurants, which is 10% of the Five Guys' entire franchise portfolio.
Yeah, he's really diversified. And then I think Rick Ross is in a similar situation. He owns like I think over 100 wing stops,
Shaq's
something like that.
Shaq's opening a 4,000 square foot Krispy Kreme facility.
Yeah, testing everything. Clearly, can't blame him though.
He owns Krispy Kreme, 150 car washes, 40 24-hour fitness centers, an entire shopping center, a movie theater, several nightclubs in Vegas and Atlanta. Hell yeah, Shaquille O'Neal.
I feel
Fuck
like
yeah.
maybe Floyd Mayweather might be the only other person who was like a sports person
Has such a
turned
serious side
businessman.
hustle game like this.
Yeah.
He has an $11 million cash and stock deal with Papa John's for any, and they in when they signed that deal, they brought back the shakaroni pizza.
Hmm. Yeah, that's when they did that initially, I was like, okay, this is gonna flop miserably because I think that was not too long after you had those NFL boycotts because of Kaepernick.
Mm.
So I'm like, oh no, a black person taking over Papa John's. All these racist fucking people are gonna not buy it because Shaq owns it, but I guess
Let's
they couldn't
see. Eight
not
foldable
eat their Papa
shack
John's.
size slices loaded with extra cheese and covered in 60 pepperoni from edge to edge. I mean,
They're probably just like, I love Papa John's and Shaq is one of the good ones, so I'll keep supporting it.
every pizza, every pizza sold within from 10/16/23 to 12/31/23, Papa John's is going to donate $1 to the Papa John's Foundation. Well, that's just like giving themselves an extra dollar. One new.
Right. It's gonna take this and put this in the Papa John's building fund.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Well, good for them though. I'm glad Shaq has a bunch of businesses because that's pretty sweet. Good for him.
I'm so tired. I'm so tired of capitalism trying to guilt the customer into like donating to some shit that they know they're only gonna give 5% of whatever you give to.
Oh, that's not a good. That's like a really good
Ugh.
charity or charitable fund. Yeah, because they always have to absorb like 97% of it is operating costs.
All right.
The campaign's
Ugh.
taking longer than we thought. It's going to cost more to pay everyone than we realized it would. We're going to have to donate less. Bastards.
Charity's such a scam. It's such a fucking scam.
Give us your money so we can drive around in this fat limo and hop around on private jets. Bastards. Hey, at least they're going to kick George Santos out of Congress. I mean, it's a small. It's
You
like
think it's actually gonna happen?
I don't. Yeah, I do. Like a bunch of people are mad at him, and he's called the head of one of the committees a pussy, and said, if you're gonna expel me, expel me. But of course, he's not going to admit to anything because then he has to, or if he's not going to like leave on his own because then that's like admitting that he actually did these things or some weird fuzzy logic that he has. That guy's got crazy logic though, like really crazy, like crazy enough to get into Congress, but like not crazy enough to stay there. Too crazy to stay there. Actually, I don't think he's crazy enough to stay there.
Yeah, I don't know. He's just such an enigma. That whole thing could be the biggest like Andy Kaufman
Yeah.
prank of all time. Where once he gets done, he's like, "Oh no, I'm far left.
Well, he's
I was just fucking with him."
he's made allegations that congressional representatives are just handing their voting cards to people to vote for them as a proxy. He said that like it's very common for congressional members to go into the House and like still drunk, go into the halls of Congress and they're still drunk. So if they decide to take him seriously and listen to what he's saying, then they're going to follow through with him, then they should follow through with everyone else, right? That's the way the laws are supposed to work.
Yep.
So then they just
Which is why I feel like they're not going to do it.
Yeah. I think he runs just as high. No, you know what? They probably can't Epstein him because he's like too weird.
Oh God, no. I also don't feel like he's actually like a predator. I
No,
feel like he's a liar and like a con artist and like a cheater and like a thief and pretty much every other thing but like a sexual predator. That's like the one thing that I don't because he's so petty where I'm like, I feel like if somebody was that petty and also a sexual predator, they definitely get turned in by now, like a long time ago. You can't be like just like
or careless.
but that publicly petty and like clapping back at people where if you got some shit on you, somebody's gonna be like, oh fuck no, they didn't just tweet that shit at me. Nah, I'm going to the FBI. I know what the fuck he did last week. And it's like if anybody had anything remotely like that on fucking it's especially in the Senate, like they tried to censor I think they did censure Rashida Tlaib.
Yeah, they did.
And it's like that was over like a tweet or some shit. So if this motherfucker had
it was because she was echoing from the rivers to the sea. In her,
I mean, but still, it's like it don't really matter what she was saying because it wasn't actually calling for genocide. So like,
oh sure,
no. The thing that she said, the fact that she actually got like, I think it passed the House. I don't know if it made it past the Senate, but the fact that they made it that far and Santos is like constantly antagonizing, like, and then what's the name? Josh Hawley pulled a fucking fire alarm. Nah, man, like,
wait, somebody pulled a fire alarm in Congress?
Yeah, and they got on video. And
what is this? The like middle school?
Yeah, that's what I'm. but this is why I'm saying, like, if you do some shit that's even like the most egregiously small line crossing in that hall, they're gonna fucking go after you. Like, oh, you think you can just go and pull a like fucking fire alarm and get away with it when you have the complete other side of the aisle in that hall trying just desperately to catch you doing something wrong? That's where I'm like, on the one hand, I hope he's not doing anything wrong like that. But on the other hand, it's like there's just constantly somebody trying to get people in trouble in those positions. So that's where I'm like, if you like even just remotely cross the line.
I mean, that's where Santos is.
Out. What's up?
That's where Santos is. They've been waiting for him to just,
Well, and he's crossed a bunch of lines, but that's where
I think that's also a reflection of like how slowly they move.
And it depends because the lines he crossed weren't enough for the Republican Party to just kick him out outright.
Yeah, it's like a cumulative effect. He has a cumulative effect, but they have a threshold for other things like certain types of speech have a very low threshold. But Santos's behavior was like totally behavioral. And it only became like things he said after he said enough.
You remember Wide Stance? When the dude got caught in the fucking airport stall trying to solicit a prostitute. I can't think of his name. They got rid of him quick and just like wiped him from the record.
Larry Craig,
yeah. They wiped his ass off the record so fast. It's like he never existed. But for a second, it's like
he's innocent. They had a wide stance. They would be the floor. Oh man. Man, the internet does not
Senator
forget.
Wide Stance. Yeah, that's all I can remember about him is
Yeah.
that he took a very wide stance.
Oh man, he
Because
was
that's how you
involved in a.
signal to the other people in the bathroom is
Yeah, but
put your foot in
there was
their
also
stall.
there was also meth involved in that whole scandal.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah. But it was like August is when he got caught. September, that motherfucker was gone. September 1st.
sorry, I quit.
So
The anti-gay senator.
August 1st, he was caught. Oh wait, no, June 11th. Okay, that's when he was first arrested.
So a couple months, but
But
still, that's pretty
that's
quick
really quick. That's
for
really
Congress.
fast.
That's like a sprint for Congress. Shit,
Yeah.
they have to
So
agree on
that's
the type
where
of
again.
pens and the letterhead for their legal pads before they can do anything. Anyways,
Well, and that's the difference in
what kind of water glasses are we going to use this year, guys?
so that's where like you remember when Al Franken got kicked out
Oh yeah, because he made a
and
bad
people
gesture in a photograph that was supposed to be
yeah,
funny.
that's fucking terrible. And that's where I'm like, okay, the thing about it is if it had never been photographed and he had made that joke in front of people and that person never knew about it until later and then came up with something and was like, he did this thing to me while I was asleep, it probably wouldn't have resulted in him losing his position. But because there was a photo, he lost his position. There was no question about it. And I think at the time, people were more sensitive to the point where if it were like 5 years before or 5 years later, he might not have necessarily lost his position. He just had that shit surface at the worst possible time for him. At the same time, it's definitely like it doesn't matter who it was. That's an offense. If that picture was taken, that is a sign that person has boundaries that they're willing to cross, that you don't know where that line ends. But I'm not willing to fucking stick up for that person. No longer am I going to be like, okay, Al Franken is somebody who, like, I mean, not that I knew him in the first place, but once you have that photo, I'm like, this motherfucker, I don't know what he's doing when the camera's off. If he's doing this when the camera's on, I'm also not going to trust his judgment on law because this happened in a way where he was if he was a comedian at the time and doing jokes for service people, that woman's serving the country. Like, you still don't make that fucking joke. And then, like, there's a bunch of lines that were still crossed to where I'm like, I still don't trust this guy's judgment. Was it the like worst assault? It wasn't assault. It was like a bad gesture that was also sexual. It wasn't a physical assault. It wasn't like actual touching. So on the one hand, that's the one incident, but there was another incident where he got accused of touching. So it's like, not to say that the touching incident was real, but once you have this picture outline, I'm like, okay, this motherfucker does sound like he would be like, accidentally groping somebody when he's giving him a hug or some shit. So like, I'm not about to start defending Al Franken just because he has a D in his name, but also when people like knowing that people were hypersensitive, I'm still not about to be like, yeah, he should have kept his job. Like, no, get him out too. Get him out. Get other people out if they do other shit that's similar, because we don't need anybody who's like crossing those lines in positions of authority. There's just too many fucking people at this point. It's not like we're lacking for number of humans. There's 300. I mean, because then you don't have to be born in America to become a senator. It's like, or a congressperson. So it's like, we're not even limited to people born in America at that point. So it's like, you really have billions of people that could be in our Senate in some form, or in our Congress in some form, so many that we don't need to like hold on to this facade of what we thought this person was before we found out this new piece of information that we should then take in and say, okay, this person is no longer who I thought they were. So from that point on, I'm going to not give them the benefit of the doubt, not give them the authority they had, and give someone else who's not had that same sort of character flaw or character, you know, criminal aspect of their history. Like in Franken's case, it wasn't criminal, but it could have been in the situation where the timing of the one with the actual touching would have been in an era where people were more listened to. That could have been a criminal offense. So just because he didn't get a criminal case doesn't negate the fact that what he did could have been seen as a criminal offense at a different point in time. So not the whole reason I brought up Al Franken is just because I know it's not just something that happens to Republicans, but with Santos, like, I initially thought he shouldn't be there on the mere fact that he lied about a bunch of shit to get there. Well, then the Republicans don't take him out for those reasons. Well, I'm like, okay, if he's not my party and the reasons I thought he should be out, they're okay with, well, I'm gonna go, fuck it, whatever. I'm done with it. So, I mean, I wasn't like heavily invested in it, but when they overlook those things and then it becomes like, oh, you spent money on OnlyFans. And to be fair, campaign money shouldn't be spent on OnlyFans, but I know he's definitely not the only one. So if they're gonna start doing that, then fucking let's do it. Let's wipe out every fucking congressperson and every senator that spent a goddamn dollar of public funds on pornography of any sort, because that's gonna not just be Santos. I know for sure these motherfuckers don't know how to get free pornography in the age of 2023, and they're paying for it, probably using the fucking public credit card because they got lazy, at least on one account. So that's where I'm like, I know he's not the only one. So if we're gonna go down that road, let's do it. Let's fucking do it.
There's like free VR porn. How can people
every kind of porn?
How could people have to pay for any of this shit anymore? I don't even understand who pays for it.
People who are too horny to Google for 1 second.
How do they not?
Like, you have to be so horny you can't stop and think for a second, like, wait a minute, there's this internet thing. There's surely got to be free pornography in the type that I want somewhere. And just let me take a second and stop being horny and figure out where I can find this pornography. Stop being so horny. But that person can't stop those. They can't get to that fucking 1 second thought. I mean, to get them to not have to pay for pornography.
It's easier to find porn than anything else on the whole ass internet. The whole internet is easier to find porn. You can find porn without looking for it. You actually have to look for certain things to find them.
The problem, though, is when you find the easy porn, that shit has a way of, like, getting those people's credit cards information, and now suddenly they're paying again, even though it was initially the free porn, because they don't know how to avoid those traps where it's like, oh, you watch the 2-minute clip, and then they're like, oh, you want to watch the full video? You got to pay for it. And they're like, Wait a minute. No, you really don't have to pay for it. You can just find the full video
Just search
online
for more of
somewhere.
it, and it's there. Look for the full
It's
length. Look for
definitely there
look
somewhere.
for the video that's greater than 20 minutes. And
I
you'll
guarantee.
find the original, or it'll exist in the full movie, which is like 2 hours long, which is insane that that even exists, but it does. God, I can't. It's hard for me to. I can't even project into the mind of somebody who hasn't figured out how to not pay for porn. I mean, I can see how somebody hasn't figured out how to watch UFC or like whatever Stanley Cup or the Super Bowl or World Series or whatever the big game is. I can see how somebody might have not figured out how to do that. I can even see how it's possible that people haven't figured out how to watch like motorsports because a lot of that stuff is hidden behind paywalls, and that's just a thing. But porn is the easiest thing to find. It's easier to find porn than it is to find a recipe, like a good recipe to make a meal. I think we looked it up one time. There's something like 400 million years of porn if you had tried to watch it end to end, like all of it, or something dumb.
Yeah.
There's like 80,000 minutes of porn uploaded every day, or something even more absurd. Or no, it's more like 80,000 minutes every minute, or 10,000 minutes of porn uploaded every minute. Something astronomically, like, just who's creating all this data and where is it being stored and why are they just storing it? Some aliens, some alien archaeologists are going to find Earth in 20,000 years and we're all going to be gone, but they're going to be able to boot our hard drives back up and they'll be like, whoa, these people were really into it.
Can we just start calling it the porn planet
Porn
from
planet.
now on? Like, that's what we make the most of, apparently.
Well, if it's not like people having sex porn, it's like people welding things porn, or people cooking meat porn, or people baking really delicious looking pastries porn, or, you know, how to do, or some kind of breakdown of what something is so people don't actually have to watch the whole movie. That's the one that really bothers me on YouTube lately, is that they think that I want to watch synopsis of sci-fi, and not just synopsis, but like very thorough breakdowns. Like, this was somebody's, you know, midterm project for their telecom class. It takes all the fun out of watching a movie.
Oh man, people have. I mean, I'm not gonna call them weird, but the breadth and depth of fetishes that people have is, I don't know if it's real or not. It feels like fetishes are starting to arise from boredom, and then in tandem with that fetish boredom, you have access to an ever expanding set of possibilities. So if it were like, if okay, think about this. In 19, let's say 1965, the number of categories of pornography is probably a hundredth, maybe. I don't know what the actual ratio would be of how much smaller it is, but it's definitely not going to be the same. Like, there's a point where I think it's like, in the 18, like late 1800s, you have S&M really emerging in pornography. It's like, you have sadistic imagery in other things, but as far as like actual S&M pornography, that's the type of things that people aren't really like starting to consume in the mainstream until like late 1800s, early 1900s. And then it's not even that, The scale's not that large. And then it's not to say that it's not real, but then if you compare it with what is called like that type of thing today, it's not even remotely like it's tame. It's so tame where you're like, modern people would struggle to call that stuff the things that they called it then because those things have evolved in a way that now it's so specific that you might have somebody who's into like latex play but not intercourse and not anything sexual, but that's what gets them off sexually. And it's like, wait, what? So there's all these things where the nuances and the directions that fetishes have gone seemingly without limit have expanded without limit. And that's where I'm like, on the one hand, good for people for finding what gets them off, but I'm not sure if all that is necessary, and it's like sometimes there's underlying issues that makes it a person feel like they need to do these other things that if they address that issue, they wouldn't need to do all that to be in
Cock
that
and
space.
ball torture porn.
Yeah. I wasn't gonna say it, but that's like the most extreme. I mean, not the most. I guess there's more. There's always some more extreme shit, but it gets so bad where you're like, you and I can't imagine what the headspace is like for that person.
Hell no.
To enjoy that, but it's probably not a good headspace. Obviously, like you got to really hate yourself to feel pleasure from doing that, or your shit has to be really desensitized. I don't know what it is. If like, I'm not trying to explore what the mental space is like, but it's not gonna be a good place. Like nobody who's happy with their life is like, okay, I'm
beating
done with
their
my
meat.
yeah. I'm gonna go home and put my balls in a vice.
Oh, that just sounds terrible. Why?
No. And again, I'm not trying to be like this is abnormal. But what I'm saying is no person who's like happy with any part of their life is torturing their genitals on purpose. Like you have to be mostly unhappy with your life. I'm assuming. But again, that person may not say it, but if okay, this is where like if a person was like, I'm really happy. I love life. I really enjoy life and everything's beautiful, rainbows and sun is shining. And then you find out that person tortures their balls and penis. And you're like, wait, what? Those I suppose it's possible, but the incongruity is so glaring when you try to put those two things together. It's like when you try to fucking put two magnets that are charged the same together. It's like, oh no, this is not going together. Like, no, you're never gonna hear that. Like that person is gonna be the most emo, the most goth, the most dark,
That's
the
like,
most
yeah,
like
that's like the most Mad Max thing to do. Seriously, that's how those like Fury Road dudes masturbate. They put in a clamp and they beat their shit with a fucking hammer because
now you're getting it, or not that you didn't get it. But
I'm just illustrating
you're like talking about the person that does that.
Oh yeah, no,
that's the person.
That's the fucking Mad Max masturbation method there. The 3 M's. Ugh. Or 4 M's. Holy shit. Witness
So
me.
it's shit like Mad Max though that I don't know if that type of media contributes to that person because I don't know for sure. I'd have to like talk to the director, but I'm assuming that Mad Max had some warning elements to it that it wasn't meant to glorify that lifestyle. Like I can only hope. Like
I
I read
think
that into it.
I think that
I can only hope.
the first three movies were supposed to have like a semi cautionary tone, but I think the most recent iteration, the Fury Road iteration, it it's had like a Boba Fett effect. There's like a Mad Max vehicle like festival out in the desert every year now as a result of
Yeah.
that whole movie culture of hot rodding cars to be post-apocalyptic desert runners. And they're really cool art cars. They look dangerous as fuck. Like that thing rolls over, everyone's dying. Like everyone around them within 50 feet is dying, kind of thing. But the vehicles are art cars, and they look really sweet. And there's an art culture that's emerged around it, and they have their own, you know, gathering cuisine and libations and all that stuff. And so that part's kind of cool. It's like a weird post-apocalyptic punk cosplay thing. But I think that the what's emerged is like glorifying all of the raw. It's just like Starship Troopers. The wrong aspects of the story are being amplified and glorified. We're not supposed to want to end. We're not supposed to want to end up in that place. Just like we're not supposed to want to end up in the cyberpunk universe. We don't want to end up in any of those dystopian or post-apocalyptic spaces, but the cultures are encouraged to develop and reflect their reverence for the design language.
Yeah, and that's,
Man, I bet it bothers people when their their weird outlet, their hobby is referred to as design language. Oh, that's great design language there. I have no idea what it is, but it's got really good design language.
well, and I guess that what you just said is why I'm not sure about the original intentions of the Mad Max creators because it's been lost in this modern culture.
Yeah.
So it's like it's hard to know if that was their like without examining that director's and writer's visions because I don't know. I don't even know who it is off the top of my head, but it's like with George Romero, you know for sure that he was trying to make that commentary about consumers culture. So when zombies
Hey, all you zombies in the
lose all of
theater at the
that,
mall, I'm talking to you.
but you know when the Night of the Living Dead franchise is a 1,000% a cash grab, and the people who are buying anti-zombie munitions at a markup just because they have fucking neon shell casings. That's not what Romero wanted, but he's still gonna make money off of it if he could,
Yeah.
So it's like, um, you can't hate him for that, and it's not you can't. I don't think you can get mad at somebody for making a piece of media that's misinterpreted unless they continue to play into the misinterpretation for capitalism. That's when I'm like, okay, then you can start criticizing that person because I feel like not to say he didn't correct it, but Mike Judge, I feel like let some shit get out of his control that then had a net negative effect. Not just Beavis and Butthead. It's not the only one.
King of the
But
Hill,
yeah,
Idiocracy, Office
yeah,
Space.
yeah. Fucking multiple things that he made
His
got
cynicism.
absorbed by capitalism and lost the meaning in the process, undermined what his creation was. And when you do that too many times, that's when you open yourself up for criticism about selling out. And that's where I'm like, I don't think Mike Judge is a sellout, but I think he has sold out multiple times in the past to be able to like have his artistic freedom that he enjoys.
Yeah.
Well, because then, did you see the new Beavis and Butthead films?
I watched the it was a movie, wasn't it? Yeah, I watched the movie and I tried to watch some of the TV series. The TV series was like a nostalgia grab,
It's
and I
yeah,
didn't really enjoy it because I had zero expectation that they would change, and I was right. They didn't change, and the problem is that because they didn't change, they are out of time and in the wrong space. And the movie was just like the movie was a sci-fi movie with Beavis and Butthead. That's it. It could have been Bill and Ted, and it would have been just as enjoyable. Probably more enjoyable if it was Bill and Ted. But Bill and Ted did their own
did you
movie
see the new
recently.
Bill and Ted?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I'm like. I haven't watched it, so I'm like, I don't know.
it
It just
was
didn't sound interesting.
it was equal parts fun and sad.
Yeah, that's what I expected,
So I'm not
which is
going
why I
to
didn't watch it.
yeah I'm not going to give it a high mark. It was fun, but it was sad. Like well, that whole story that story needed Rufus, and having no
Mm-hmm.
Rufus is like there was no cynicism to guide them. It was just they were just bumbling idiots trying to figure out like how to fix something that they didn't know how it worked in the first place. Like they'd never learned anything in the first two movies. So it was just sad. At least the Beavis and Butthead sci-fi movie was um, those those characters very easily roll with the punches because that's all they know to do. They just know how to take it. And so the setup was decent for like a dated Beavis and Butthead science fiction movie. I watched the shit out of Beavis and Butthead when I was younger. I loved that stuff. The first movie, I got in line to watch it on the day it opened in theaters. Like me and a bunch of my friends like all coordinated to hop in the vehicle and drive to the movie theater and see the first possible screening we could. And it was worth it because the whole movie theater was packed with other people who had the exact same plan, and it was like the weirdest version of church because everyone laughed at the same time. Everyone was making their best Beavis or Butthead noises in time with the movie. Like it was incredible. Like I said, though, the strangest church moment because it's Beavis and Butthead. But I think that's also like a reflection of how things change and how if you're keeping up and paying attention, then some things that are dated will immediately become dated. And so yeah, like old information still might be good. Like that old encyclopedia might still have some accurate information because a lot of things probably haven't changed, but it probably has a bunch of dated information that has been uh, supplanted with more accurate information or more detailed information or more up to date information.
Well, on that note, have you tried to like watch a old Beavis and Butthead episode?
Yeah,
I
they're
mean,
absolutely terrible.
oof,
I can't even.
oof.
I don't know what I was thinking when I was watching that stuff because
I
it's
mean, it was novel,
it was
and
yeah it
this
was
is where,
funny. Well, it was funny because it's like, ha, those are those bumbling idiots that I know in school that like are always getting themselves into some crazy shit. This is the crazy shit they're doing. Ha ha ha.
well, and nobody had done that yet.
Yeah.
Nobody had done a TV show where the people who were talking weren't uh speaking without filler words, and every word was planned and not wasted, and the back to back joke delivery, like that type of, it was almost in some ways it was minimalist, but in other ways it was over the top. So that type of combination of
Such basic illustration too.
yeah, it was very basic in the first season. Oh my god.
Like almost
But even the
that's
storylines,
yeah.
it's not really complex shit. It's like, oh, finding a tractor and running over a bee's nest or something stupid where it's
Finding
not even
like putting a firecracker in a bottle and then Beavis blowing his hand off because he's too
yeah,
stupid
shit
to
like
let
that.
go of it. Of course, he has a hand in the next scene, so it wasn't that bad.
But that's also very in the same way that South Park used to kill off Kenny
Every time they could,
and then it got old and then they had to like start making fun of that being old to make it a joke. And then Kenny doesn't even, doesn't die at all anymore.
yeah, because the joke is dead.
Yeah. Like they don't even reference it.
You know,
I'm
I
assuming
think
they
there
don't
was
reference it.
actually a uh, a very like a micro generational benefit with Beavis and Butthead. Like it may have had a dramatic impact on a few people, made them empowered to just be idiots. But I think that it also gave everyone a very clear idea of what an idiot really is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then once everyone knew, once we have this very basic and easy to remember example of what idiots really are, it's we don't actually need to have more content because that kind of content is like essentially timeless. At least until firecrackers are banned completely. Some idiot's always going to blow their hand off stuffing too many of them into a bottle. And what other dumb? Oh yeah, as long as there are people who are leaving like tractor tires just laying around near hills, some idiot's going to climb into one and try and roll down it and probably kill themselves.
But then people are also gonna lie. So like the kid who supposedly learned, fire from Beavis and lit the house on fire, he'd never watched Beavis and Butthead. But his fucking mom lied about that shit and got the show banned from saying fire. So, fucking American pseudo Christians are gonna pull up some bullshit like that. My daughter got possessed by this pile of magic cards and
Man,
Harry
and
Potter possessed my kid.
in that moment, that person becomes a character on Beavis and Butthead, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the scary part. Like, man, Mike Judge really is from the future, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Like that guy's got just he's managed to deliver some of the most like incredible like allegories of don't let these things happen, and then they get
Oh,
kind of
Silicon Valley was so accurate.
oh dude they
Jesus Christ, they nailed that shit.
and the part that's funny about Silicon Valley because I watched it after I think I started watching it in season 2. The first season, as I was watching it, was like, yeah, this is basically playing catch up to reality. But then by season 2, they'd almost started predicting the future. And then next thing you know, it's like that starts happening in the real world after the show has already been released. And I'm having this like, what the hell's going on kind of experience.
Especially when they did the like epilogue 50 years into the future, or however long it was,
Yeah.
or
Oh, yeah. Except it's happening a lot sooner than they said it would.
uh-huh.
Like,
Yeah, he was
this guy's
whew.
way too. He's definitely from the future.
Yeah, after what was it, season 3, it seemed like he moved ahead of the timeline.
And everything is still catching up accurately, which is so fucked up. I think that's the dilemma of idiocracy. It was it wasn't aimed at intelligent people who actually might have like some capacity to redirect. It was aimed at idiots.
Yeah.
And it had like the opposite effect. Instead of getting people to be like, oh yeah,
No, so this is interesting. It wasn't aimed at idiots. It was that when they did the screening tests, nobody got the right jokes, so they were laughing at the wrong things.
Man.
So he didn't aim it at idiots. The people just didn't get it, and that's where he was like, he when you hear him talk about it, he was so disappointed watching people like laugh at like the F bomb or like the fart jokes in the film,
Yeah,
where
but
it's like,
leave me alone, baiting. Go away, baiting. Like, I mean, that is funny, but it's only funny for a little bit, and then once they play that joke over and over again on commercials, it's like, holy shit, that's actually scary. I saw Idiocracy as like kind of a horror movie, like a really weird dark comedy horror movie.
I mean, yeah, especially like the more shit comes true.
Like we should have all been terrified of that kind of future the first time we saw that movie, but instead it was just like ha ha ha, Idiocracy.
Well, the studio buried it too, so not enough people saw it in the
Yeah,
first place.
yeah. I didn't even know it had a theatrical release. I saw it as like, um,
Because it got no promotion.
no, I think I read about it in one of those like slept on movies of last year that you didn't see but wish you would, but you really should have kind of write ups.
Yeah,
It's like Idiocracy. What the hell's this?
they did zero promotion because the studio was so mad. Guys, I think he like makes fun of their shit in it.
Of course.
As like part of the reason. I don't know if it was direct or indirect, but they definitely were like, nope, you're not, you know, getting no promotion. So he definitely pissed some people off with that film.
Let's see, what was it? What was Terry Crews? I had the just
Macho Camacho.
Macho Camacho. No, but he had like the best whole name, full name in that.
Oh yeah, there's like
Like,
super long something Mountain Dew.
where is it?
Right.
President. I just gotta look it up. Dwayne Elizondo Mountain Dew Camacho. Dwayne Camacho. That was such a good performance. That was such a good performance for an American president. His portrayal of like the candor of the office was unparalleled.
But now we're getting closer and closer to The Rock actually running for president. I feel like now that the box office kind of rejected him, he's gonna need his validation somewhere else.
Oh, he's
The
totally
ballot
gonna have the
box.
best campaign rallies.
Oh God.
It's gonna be amazing. There's gonna be pyro and like brick breaking, and he's gonna shoot stuff out of cannons at the audience, like full of rock
Oh my
memorabilia,
God.
like little foam rocks and T-shirts, or little foam rocks that
Jesus.
when you like, or little rocks that when you expose them to water, they expand into a T-shirt, or actually probably a muscle shirt.
Here's Kevin Hart open up for him every
Yeah,
time.
Kevin Hart will totally open up. Kevin Hart's gonna be his vice president.
Oh no, don't give him any ideas, man.
Like I could go, like they haven't already thought of that.
Because that shit is like, if Donald Trump can win, Jesus Christ, we'll
Oh, man.
definitely end up in that movie,
Yeah,
and that shit will not be funny.
I mean, President Rock and Vice President Hart.
Oh God,
Rock hard. Rock hard. Oh, God.
rock hard.
We don't need this. It's going to happen, though, isn't
No,
it?
no. We definitely don't want to incept that.
You know, I mean,
It's on some like.
no, there's a way to make sure this doesn't happen. It's going to be The Rock versus John Cena. That'll never happen. Yeah, okay.
Not that I follow wrestling, but like CM Punk going back to WWE is a big deal in that I think we're starting to see the ripple effect of like 3 months ago starting to impact in terms of when we were in the heart of the strikes,
Oh
and
yeah.
there's no content being planned and there's no content capable of being planned. That impact isn't it some of it's immediate, but some of it is like delayed to the point where I'm like, there was no the biggest news of this weekend was CM Punk coming back to WWE in terms of anything that's not war related. Because I haven't, I'm assuming there's war related. Oh yeah, there was the hostages were there was like two waves of hostages being released, so there
Yeah.
was war news being pushed. But the other thing that was out, the biggest news is CM Punk, where I'm like, there's this is a slow ass news week, slow ass news weekend.
Slow ass news
Um,
2 weeks. What the hell's going on here?
because even before that, it was like Taylor Swift in the NFL. That's everything is like consolidating because they ran out of capacity to like make inorganic media shit happen that wasn't also transparent enough to let you know that it was a constructed media event. So then that happening is like for like the last 2 months, Taylor Swift in the NFL was like the biggest news every week. And then there was no real like Jada Pinkett would pop up saying some more ridiculous shit, and then Taylor Swift is back, and then Jada Pinkett pops back up saying some more ridiculous shit because the first thing didn't catch on, so she has to come say some more ridiculous shit. And there's been this weird cycle of like nothing in terms of entertainment media to the point that CM Punk trending and being some of the biggest entertainment news of this weekend is legitimate, and it's remarkable because I don't watch wrestling, and that's where I'm like, for that to be making it to this level of entertainment is like, oh, they must not have anything to talk about. It's the same thing with like the George Santos shit. Like, if there's dirt to be discussed, if there's a fucking broken marriage to be fucking hated on, that shit's gonna be all over the news. Like, even, you know, did you see the DJ Envy stuff that was happening in the
No.
past like 2 months? That's even gone away. Where it's like they must not have made any new developments in that case because no new content's being pushed on it. Where it's like, if you're like in certain circles, you're gonna see the daily stuff that's like, is not real news. Like, I watch hip hop news, so there's this video of this guy Hassan Campbell getting shot because he goes into like the Bronx and starts just talking shit in a project, like in a random project. He's just yelling and is talking shit to these. Well, he ends up getting shot. So that's like, I don't know who the fuck Hassan Campbell is, but because I watch hip hop news, I know about that.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, if you're tapped into certain things, you're gonna find out the like nonsense bullshit daily stuff that never makes it outside of those circles. Like, I'm sure you haven't heard of, like, I don't even know who the fuck he is, but I know he got shot because he was talking shit. So
What?
there's these things where it's like, and the only reason I even watch that type of stuff is to stay tapped into hip hop culture in terms of like, I don't know half these motherfuckers in the music aspect of it, but then there's like a whole cultural aspect of hip hop that has almost nothing to do with music, where it's like a lot of it exists on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, and like it's about like, oh, Joe Budden dissing Drake and like Drake responding and then Drake doing an album. So a lot of hip hop has become storylines in the same way that like WWE does storylines. And it always existed, but now it's like easier to actually like follow because then you get different levels of information aggregation. So you have like DJ Vlad, and then you have No Jumper, and you have Daily Loud, which are all culture vultures. Um, and DJ Vlad, to his credit, he's like been a culture vulture for a long time. That doesn't make him not a culture vulture, but that's where, because the culture vultures exist, I try to like follow the actual people who are in those places and doing the journalism that then the culture vultures steal and try to like water down for white audience, because that's how you end up with the mainstream news. But there's this undercurrent of stuff that's also happening that if you're not like tapped in, you would know it's happening, because all you, not like you, but all that gets pushed to the mainstream is what the culture vultures then push out. So that's where I'm like, I don't want to like follow the hip hop narratives that get the clicks and that the culture vultures are pushing, because that's usually the negative shit. And that's where um you don't have to. Okay, here's an example. So I don't know if you heard about this, but T.I. built a housing addition for disadvantaged youth that I think it's for like up to 25 families, and I think 5 of them are specifically for like youth under 18 that don't have housing. Like, did you hear about that?
Nope.
So that's the exact type of thing where if you're not tapped in to like the hip hop news, that shit ain't never gonna make it to fucking mainstream because it's too positive. Like, I don't know if T.I. is a good person. I know he's had definitely some questionable shit brought up in his past, but like,
Yeah, I think he got arrested for owning
shit,
like a bunch of machine guns
shit,
without having the right kind of licensing and stuff like that.
Well,
like a whole ass arsenal.
That's the one he got in trouble
like actually
for.
got in trouble for.
But then there's other shit that he got accused of where it's like, you know, I don't know, yes or no, but there was never any charges brought, and that's where it's like, you know, you can't act as if those two things are equal, because in one case, yeah, he definitely got in trouble and definitely got charges and definitely like served time. So there's clear admission and acknowledgement of guilt in one situation, and that's not the same.
I think it's actually kind of stupid. If he'd have just like filed some paperwork or had waited for the paperwork to get filed, then he probably would have been fined, or it would have been okay. Because it's not like illegal to own these things if you have the right paperwork and licensing. It's just an issue of letting the government know that you have these things and being allowed to have them also. So who knows? It wasn't so bad that it cost him his entire career. But he did get in trouble for that. I remember that very clearly, actually.
Right.
Because it just seems so absurd to me. Like, come on, this guy's
if they're gonna blast the one, then the fact that the other doesn't get any acknowledgement, I feel like, is why you get this negative side of the culture.
Sure.
That gets represented as being like the only part of the culture, and that's especially bad with the culture vultures.
Yeah, no, exactly. I agree. I don't even. My point with that was like, yeah, he did something that was like all it really would have required was like the proper licensing, and he could have done that through a company. Like they could have had that all handled through a trust, and so he wouldn't have actually had to be the owner of any of it. He would have just been a part of that trust. There's a way that all of these things can work without exposing people to that kind of like, you know, like direct government exposure. But they didn't do that. So He got penalized. But he still has a career, so it wasn't that bad. It didn't like cause him to get kicked out of the creative society.
Right. And again, that's where, not to say that that's the proof or anything like that.
No, I think he just got lucky with that.
Yeah. And that's where there's situations like, I don't know if you remember when the first time Jamie Foxx got accused of like impropriety, not the most recent one. I haven't heard the details of I saw like brief explanation of the most recent accusation. Well, they're not recent, but they're old accusations that were only brought out recently. But the first time, it was like when I heard it, I'm like, okay, this sounds. I don't know if it sounds made up or if it sounds just like embellished or what, or like if it's so, if it's if it happened in real life and it's such an absurd event that nobody would believe it. But like when that one happened, I'm like, okay, I don't know if people are so comfortable in their power that they're like willing to do stupid, ridiculous things like that just to prove a point, or if people were trying to like leverage a moment to whether I don't think it was necessarily get famous, but for whatever reason, um, put this narrative in the public consciousness. Because there was another one that happened where,
Well, I think
this girl,
it's not saying in this AP referenced article that I found who wrote the article, just says Associated Press.
yeah, because it never really, it kind of just disappeared. But the initial claim was that he like tapped his genital on someone's forehead like a wand or something. And that's where when I heard it, I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where the other person was sitting, but that's the only like way they described it. So when it was like in the media, it was like not that it wasn't taken seriously, but when they were describing it, they would like go about it in a way where you're like, you can't not laugh at it because I guess when he did it, he also went boop or something like that out loud. Like that, having that in the description, you're like, okay, this sounds like a bit. This sounds like they're fucking with the media to see if they can get the media to like say some shit like this out loud.
They just pulled a Bart calling Moe's bar and got Moe to say some dumb shit.
That's what it feels like, and that's where I'm like, what happened? I'm like, I don't know if this is real or if they're just like, if they're seeing if the media will actually report that story, because it's like when it was happening, it just was like, wait, is this a joke? Is this serious? So I know being in that mindset of at the time not knowing when that specific media story was being reported, if it was like him and other people trolling them, or if the person who made the accusation was doing it as just like an inside joke, or if they thought it was, or if that really happened and Jamie Foxx did something that was clearly, if he did that, that was like crossing a boundary that violated that other person. And it's like those are all very different realities, but it was hard to tell which one was really happening. Um, and it was like at the time there were no other sexual assault accusations against Jamie Foxx, so the actual thing of him happening was like less likely in a lot of people's minds. But that's where like now that there's other sexual assault accusations happening, it's like that thing may then have some more merit to it, or not even necessarily that it needed the second story to give merit to the first one, but that it creates a pattern of behavior. And that's where it was like, if there's no pattern of behavior before, that accusation does seemingly come out of nowhere. And in the context of, I don't, in people's minds when they're like looking at media, it's not like continuous. So if a story happens about Jamie Foxx now, in 2 weeks, people aren't going to be thinking about it. So then if a story comes back up in 2 more months, that'll be quote unquote out of nowhere. But that doesn't.
Well, according to ABC, he was getting really handsy. Much more than just the boop. Some groping, some underclothes action.
But that's the one that just came out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a different.
This is. Oh.
The rooftop one you're talking about.
Yeah. This is the most recent one.
That's a different.
Okay, that's not the boop.
No. So that's why, like, this issue coming out, then, like I said, it doesn't make the boop more credible, but it establishes this pattern of behavior of like, oh, maybe Jamie Foxx is this person. Because I think, it's the same with Cuba Gooding Jr., where it's like when they got him on camera, what was said happened didn't look exactly like what happened, but it wasn't far off. So like it looked questionable, where you're like, okay, this definitely looks sketchy. And I'm like, I don't know, Cuba, it looks like you're doing something fucked up.
Holy crap. Okay, so you know how I was saying it's like easier to find porn than like almost anything else. One of the hits that Google gave me back for the search of Jamie Foxx boop sexual assault, it's like 2/3 down the page. Girl's breast sucked. Busty Asian having old man sucking. Lesbian boop worship. Hot natural busty blonde girl sucking. You can get the picture. Anyways, this shouldn't show up in a search for like a celebrity.
But also, I bet at least on the second one, like those things are gonna be actual attempts to get a credit card somewhere.
Sure.
Where it's like they're not trying to give you free porn; they're trying to give you a little taste. So then they hope you pay for it, and it's like that's the type of porn that is predatory in a way where it thrives on
like I've
thoughtless horniness.
I have the cookie that it informs Google that it's okay to do AI powered search. Maybe this is what they think. This is their AI is just going to start delivering porn. Even with all the crap that the pre-AI powered search engine was giving me, I don't think I got. I don't know. Maybe I would have gotten that with the original engine. Is this a bit? Is this is news, right? This actually is news. It's newsworthy reporting. Is this the kind of thing that, like, is there an actual benefit to this until after there has been some kind of decision made or judgment made? Like Kevin Spacey lost his whole ass career.
Right, but I think the issue is the news came out and there hasn't been any movement on any legal clarity on what is going to happen with it. So I think that's
Yeah.
why Jamie Foxx hasn't necessarily lost. But Jamie Foxx was also just coming off of
Freaking
that
stroke.
illness. Yeah, I mean nobody even knows what it was still. So it's like he was out of the mainstream view for a while now anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, the last thing I remember anything Jamie Foxx was like when Chris Rock got slapped. And that was like there was Jamie Foxx was apparently in the background of that, like he was backstage or something. And then I don't remember reading anything about him for until oh yeah he has some kind of medical condition, but is recovering. There are just too many actors and too much like information about them being generated to keep track of anybody like uh, in any kind of organic way. The same as there are too many books being published and too many albums being released, or not albums, singles being released, and there's just no time to let it like organically filter through because we're not in charge of we're not in charge of the algorithm that delivers this information. Actually, I can see now if I just get rid of the word assault, Jamie Foxx boop sexual, that's probably would return a lot of porn. It's kind of a shame that this is where the media is. That like just every day it seems like some idiot out there just can't keep their dick in their pants. I'm just used to it being like Florida man, like walking nude, like scares children, women and children. Like I guess it's just a shame that like people who are able to like ascend to such heights within the public's eye are human, I guess, and do dumb shit. No one's immune from doing dumb shit. We all have to be like on our A game all the time. Actually, that's not a bad
I
thing. I
mean,
wish
it's
the
not
world
even
was
so
like that.
much. It's not even so much that we have to be on our A game.
Could
It's
be in
that
our
we don't
B
have to
game or even
bring
C game.
or not be on our creep game.
Yeah, the fail game. Just don't be a failure. Oh man, that's like such a low bar. Just don't fail.
So yeah, the other Jamie Foxx thing was in 2015. Wait, no, this is okay. The rooftop one occurred in 2015, and they,
I think the
Jesus,
boop happens in 2009.
yeah.
Oh,
Well, the issue was it came out not too long after Louis C.K.'s because his I think Jamie Foxx was in between Louis C.K. and Aziz. The only reason I'm framing that way is because these were like non the offenses didn't actually like involve necessarily like touching in all the cases. So there were all these weird things happening with comedians or people who had been comedians. And then Aziz's was like, it sounded like he tried to make out with some chick and he misread a signal and shouldn't have tried to make out with her. And so, like, when he was recounting the story,
I can just imagine it being one of those "ew, no, push him away" kind of thing.
he tried to make it seem like it was just a matter of like misunderstanding, but then the lady put out the story of her account of it, and it totally sounds like he was like not paying attention to her and also just trying to like get with her, which is like that just sounds like that very believable encounter with the dude. So I think the issue with Aziz's was like she was never claiming he assaulted her or anything like that. It was more so um, the way that he tried to get with her. She was saying it was not picking up on his signals and felt like a violation because he tried to like get with her when she wasn't trying to get with him. Because then when she said no, he stopped. So that's where it's like you can't like call somebody misreading a signal the same as like an assault. Especially when they like immediately stopped when you're like, no, he didn't. Like in her recounting of the story, there was she like pulls away when he tried to kiss her, and there's like nothing beyond that he tries to do, where it's like he's not. Once that happened, he's not physically going after her anymore, and it seems like he's embarrassed, like the way he should have been by misreading the signal. So like that is not the same as somebody getting that signal and continuing. So that's why I think when Aziz was like put in that group, it didn't actually serve the movement well, because in even the lady's own recounting of the story, he's not like aggressing after stop the request to stop aggressing is vocalized, where not reading signals is a level of creepy aloofness where if you don't know somebody's not into you and you start trying to make out with them, that's like definitely creepy, definitely questionable, definitely like fucked up. But that's not the same as the person who doesn't stop when that person pulls away. So like I think that's where, and not to say it killed it, but a lot of that movement kind of stopped with the Aziz story, and that's when people started to like push back against the narratives being brought forth, because they started to get like, it's not about questionable, but when the people who are bringing these stories up are like trying to put them on the same level as the other stories that were being put at the time, I think that kind of like
It sounds like there's a lot of
set
goalpost moving.
there was, but that also set the stage for people to start using those stories as ammunition as to why the goalpost should be moved back in the other direction. And it's like, it's not to say that those people didn't deserve to be heard, but it was like there was a lack of self-awareness where, again, I'm not blaming the Aziz accuser for people who don't give accusations the proper weight. It's more when that accuser's timing hit in the context of the Me Too movement as it was, it started like a cascade of shifting in the other direction. And it's like very specifically that story. And that's where I'm like, there was more than the Jamie Foxx one. There was like Nelly, and then there was Aziz, and then the one with Usher was like two people claimed Usher gave them herpes with no like it wasn't that they said that Usher gave them herpes even though they had consensual sex, but it was that he did not disclose that he had herpes. One of them was a woman and one of them was a man. Well, it turns out neither one of those people had actually had sex with Usher, and it was like demonstrably false that he had never been alone with those people in a way that would have allowed him to have sex in the way that they claimed. So that was another briefly big public case where it was like some idiot fucking lawyer took it on.
Hopefully Usher also does not have the herp.
Right, exactly, because he went ahead and got tested, and then I don't know if he went through with it, but I think he brought a countersuit for slander. So there's like a whole, clearly there was not a reality with those things happening, but in people's minds, those things start to culminate as like, now here's all the reasons you shouldn't listen to anybody who thinks they can just like hashtag me too. And it began to be this like the movement of the counter surgence of like the anti-woke people, that then it's like now like Russell Brand, that shit just happened to him. His career is still fine.
Yeah.
But it's because he rebranded, no pun intended, he rebranded himself in that right wing, post Me Too comedian pocket. And I was realizing this. It seems like almost all comedy has moved right wing, and in the process, it's no longer funny, and it's no longer trying to be funny. They're just making.
Well, they're trying to be funny, but they're not being clever.
I don't even know if they're trying to be funny. They're just being bullies, and that's where, just picking on trans people, picking on fucking minorities, picking on poor people, when historically the role of comedy in society, if we, especially if we go back to jesters, is meant to punch up. Like punching down makes you a bully. Yeah. Bullies aren't meant to be the ones that we pay to be on stage, unless it's explicitly that roasting style where, Def Comedy Jam, anybody can get it. If you go to that show, you're prepared to be made fun of because that's what everybody is engaging in. Not we're going to go to this comedy show and make fun of trans people. That's not the same spirit. And I like the way that the mood has shifted. I don't think that they're trying to make funny jokes to laugh at. I think they're trying to evoke that anti-trans hatred and virtue signal to the racist, homophobic, queerphobic crowd, that it's like, yeah, you can come on in here, we can make fun of trans people, we can all have a little hoot and holler, and we're gonna laugh at them, knowing damn well that the shit they're saying is mean-spirited and not in fun. And that's where I'm like, I feel like something that is truly funny has to be in the spirit of fun instead of something that's just a bully observation that's meant to like punch down and make someone else feel superior. You can laugh at the fact that other person was made to feel inferior, but it's not really funny. And I think that's, I think that's what they're going for. It's that like, oh, I just pulled down this person's pants in front of everybody, laugh at their little dick. And that's where it's like, is that is pant is pantsing somebody funny?
No.
I I like in reality, there's
The bully
it's
finds it amusing,
only
though.
funny if it's voluntary. And I think that's where, in terms of like, that's when it can be fun. If the other person volunteers, that specific thing is no longer a violation, which takes the fun out of it. And that's like, I feel like it's like a real easy mark where it's like, is everybody having fun? Then this should be, that's funny. But if somebody is not, if somebody's feeling bad and that person has to feel bad for everyone else to laugh, like that person, their feelings have to be sacrificed at that laugh's
So
expense. That's not really funny.
when I was in middle school, we were playing softball. I remember this one kid tried to pants me, but it didn't work because I had like a built-in belt in my shorts. And but then when eventually somebody did pants him, and he cried, like full on crying, like a tantrum cry. I'm pretty sure it's the bullies that think it's funny. They think it's funny. I'm not saying it's funny, but they think it's funny. At least until it happens to them.
Exactly. And that's how you know it's not funny.
Yeah.
That's how you know it's not funny.
They sure thought it was funny right up until it happened to them, though. That's actually my big issue with a lot of. I like fail videos. I like the car wreck videos because you don't see that stuff too often, and it's quite incredible. I like watching the police chases because some of that driving is incredible. It's like dangerous as can be, but just like holy shit, these guys are flying. The ones that I don't like are the Karen and the Ken videos where where I can't tell if they're having like a mental breakdown. If they're like having like maybe this person is actually having a mental breakdown. They're not able to even like comprehend the situation they're in. Are we really making fun of somebody who might be mentally ill in this moment? And that's where I end up. And so I don't watch them. I don't think they're funny. I don't think it's funny to watch somebody have a meltdown. But that's a thing now. But, some people think that's funny. A lot of people seem to think that those things have so many likes on YouTube. It's actually kind of sickening. And that's what I get for leaving autoplay on when I watch one of those fail videos. Next thing I know, there's a Karen video in front of me, and I have to go into my history and manually remove a video because I don't want more suggestions like that.
Well, and it's like, okay, I know in theory, like bullies think that shit is funny, and in terms of like when it's happening, the whole reason they're doing it is to evoke a laugh from the other bullies, because in theory they think it's funny at the like before it crosses a line, and that's when everybody knows that once there's a line that gets crossed, that shit is no longer,
Yeah.
it's no longer like funny, and it's like, oh shit, did a law get broken? Like, let's make sure nobody broke a law before we keep laughing. Maybe stop videotaping that. Like, that there's those situations escalate so quickly that the impetus to call it like horseplay or hazing or some shit where it kind of like makes light of the trauma that is resulted for one person at the expense of potentially a group, that also is meant to make the group feel okay for doing it, because everybody knows they've participated in some shit like that before, so they don't want to actually feel as bad as they should that one time it happened to them, because they didn't necessarily see the eventual breakdown that happened. Whereas I saw a kid break down in middle school one time after, it must have been, months of bullying at the hands of like a group of people. And it was like, when it was happening, it was funny until it wasn't. And then you're like, oh shit, this is real. This dude's like seriously having a mental breakdown. And then kid leaves school. And then everybody who was there that day knows deep down in their heart that it was never funny. But those that thought it was funny, even they knew that it stopped being funny once that like breakdown started. And the kid was like, he's fake laughing like antagonistically because he's no longer able to control his emotions, and he's full on having a breakdown where you don't know, this kid might pick up some shit and start swinging because now he's past that point, and now suddenly it's a completely different type of, it could have gone so left after that point where it was never funny. It just felt like it was in control, which is why people were laughing. Once it got out of control, that nobody was laughing anymore, and everybody was like, oh shit, should I like duck behind this? Is this kid is he gonna pull out a gun? Did he bring a gun to school today? Is this the day we are, like, I don't think Columbine had happened yet, so it wasn't like on our minds that he was gonna like shoot up the school, but it was definitely like, okay, maybe he's gonna like stab somebody or something, or at this point the kid was so unhinged that there's no longer any logic grounding his actions. And when you're in a locker room in a closed space and that happens, suddenly like if anybody thought that shit was funny. And that's where, I mean, knowing that I've been in that, like, I don't feel bad because I wasn't one of the people making fun of him that day. So I don't, like, for that episode, I don't harbor any like long-term bad feelings. Or I'm like, oh man, because I still talk to the dude who had the breakdown.
Yeah.
Like, we're still friends. So I know he doesn't resent me because I wasn't the one fucking doing that shit. Do I feel like do I wish I could have stood up for him? Yeah, but I don't know what that would have necessarily done. That wouldn't have made him feel like people weren't picking on him. It may have made him feel like he had more support, but that's not going to stop those dudes from like finding that kid later and then fucking beating him up, because that shit would happen too. So there's a lot of stuff about it where you can't feel guilty for other people's bullying, but those motherfuckers know what they were doing. Yeah. And that's where I'm like, to get a laugh, people will do some extreme shit and deep down know what they're doing is wrong, even though the end result is like a ha 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 laugh. Everybody's giggling, fucking like you just ate some sugar and you're on a sugar high. Like, that don't mean some bad shit just didn't happen, but those types of people are able to like convince other people to laugh at the horrible shit effectively by bullying them into just capitulation. So that's also why it's like good to stop laughing at those people as and people like our age probably aren't laughing at them anymore, but sometimes it happens where you're like in a work situation where somebody's getting bullied and you have to play along with it because you don't want to lose your job or some shit. Whereas like we're supposed to be able to like know when we need to stand up, but it's not always that easy. And I think that's where it's like you don't know when you should be the person to like stand up against the bully, but like when it's past that, when it's past that point. There's like a point when you don't know, but like once you're past it, it's like fuck, it's too late. I don't know if we can turn this around, or if I can be the person to turn this around. And that's where it's like, it's hard to know when doing some shit is gonna de-escalate, or if it's just gonna make it feel like you're antagonizing somebody and escalate it even further.
Yeah, man. Bullies in managerial positions, though. That's like the worst. One would think that by the time everyone's an adult and has received some kind of concentrated training in a field, that they wouldn't, these things would be filtered out, but I guess they're not. Or they'd be consolidated in like, certain types of personalities would gravitate towards certain types of jobs. That's what I always figured. Like there's got to be a personality type that gravitates towards construction, or like the person who is willing to to pick up the trash, because they get paid really well, but that's like somebody has to be like willing to do that job. I think that's like a special personality type, not just I need a job, but like somebody who's like, yeah, I'll do that. I don't care if I smell like trash. But I'm pretty sure a lot of people wouldn't do that job. I guess.
Oh, for sure.
I guess that model is like, my model is limited then, because, maybe bullies would gravitate towards middle management. Can't do anything else except be like aggressive at people. Don't actually have to know anything about what's being done. They just have to micromanage. I guess that is where bullies end up. Fuck them. Bullies suck anyways. Exceptional Radio. Exceptional Randos shows produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.